to get a perspective and some facts on this, I want to talk to an old friend of mine, an expert, Rakib Ehsan, who is the senior fellow at the think tank Policy Exchange. Afternoon, Rakib.
Afternoon, Trevor. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Now, look, those who currently have settled status would be forced to reapply for a new visa under the reform plan. What would be the point of that? Wouldn't they just get another go round?
Well, I think that with reforms plans, I think there needs to be greater clarity. Now, people who have already been given that indefinite leave to remain, I think that was one of the conditions in terms of the European Union withdrawal agreement. So I think that the direction of travel, I think, is very clear that Reform UK, they're looking to really draw attention to the so-called Boris wave in the region of 3.8 million migrants which have arrived in the UK after the January 2021 liberalisation of visa rules under the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. But I still think that in terms of the details, there's some strengthening to be done.
But it's doing them some good business, isn't it? It sounds like, I suppose, what everybody says they want, which is to reduce migration numbers. They want to raise the salary threshold that people have to earn to be able to stay up to 60,000. Does that mean that all those nurses in the NHS are just basically just going to have to go home?
Well, I think that that's something that needs to be cleared up. Now, if you want to have this kind of policy where you want to wean the UK off its immigration hyper-dependency, whether that's the hospitality sector, health and social care, then you need a very ambitious and comprehensive skills, pay and training strategy. I think you can't really achieve one without the other. I think it's very clear here that one possible route to take is that you really try to make health and social care a more attractive profession, a better paid one, and one with more favourable working conditions for British citizens. So I think that with Reform UK, if they want to go down the road of ultimately reducing our dependency on migrants for particular sectors, that needs to be complemented with a very ambitious strategy in terms of making them more attractive for domestic citizens.
There's another factor which really struck me yesterday. I read that Donald Trump has decided that he wants to raise the cost of what are called H-1B visas into the United States. And the tech companies, Silicon Valley and all of that, rely very heavily on those visas to bring, clever web developers and all the rest of it, from particularly from India and Southeast Asia. Now, I thought when I heard that from Trump that what would then happen is, great, they're all going to come here. And that's why all the tech bros were here last week with Trump saying we're going to invest in Britain, because actually, if they've got a base here, if they can't bring people to America, they can bring them here and do their business. How would reform's plans affect that?
Well, I think that when it comes to their base, I think that idea of there being global Britain and, for example, taking advantage of Donald Trump's policy here in terms of that particular visa, I'm not entirely sure much of their base are really saying that, this is a golden opportunity to stimulate greater economic growth in the UK. I think what we're seeing on the British political right is that growing protectionism, where people would want to see more of the language of, well, we want to invest in our own tech-savvy younger people as opposed to attracting those from the Indian subcontinent, for example. So I think that what we're seeing here is that there's a shift in conservative politics more generally, where you see that sort of global Britain politics giving way to a more protectionist understanding of how we should approach the international political economy and ultimately how we should invest in domestic citizens more generally.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you say suggests that this is pretty shonky economics, but it may turn out to be rather good politics.
Indeed.
In the sense that it is reform saying to British workers, actually, we're on your side, we're going to protect jobs for you and so on. So is this another case of Nigel Farage perhaps beginning to outfox his opponents?
Oh, no, certainly. I think that for some time, Nigel Farage has been looking to park his teal tanks on Labour's traditional red lawns, talking about that sort of workers' rights, even looking to seduce the trade unions in some ways as well. So it's very interesting that he's striking a very culturally conservative tone, especially on those issues of immigration, asylum and national identity. But if you're looking at the economics, it's taking more of a protectionist dimension, which I think is that sort of old-fashioned social democracy. Some people on the sort of Labour left would would actually find that quite attractive. So I think what you're seeing here, conservatism in the UK is shifting from that more sort of free market liberalism, more of that openness towards the global economy, towards a more sort of national protectionist model.
I think just lastly on this, there's a very striking piece of work done by a guy called Luke Trill, the More in Common pollster, which analyses voting intention by whether you've been to state school or private
I've seen
school.
that, yeah.
And the interesting thing here is that the one demographic in which Labour shined is amongst private schools, where privately educated people are twice as likely to vote for Labour as for reform, whereas state school people are, I think, I think that the numbers now are something 30-something percent to 20-something percent in favour of reform. That is quite a change, isn't it?
It's quite a remarkable change. I think you could almost say that there's this kind of bourgeoisation almost of Labour support, where you have this very interesting contradiction where Labour's been looking to introduce these VAT charges for private schools, but it seems like it has a great deal of support among those who attended those establishments. But I think also what you're seeing on the British political right, and I think you can see those dynamics across the pond as well. You have a sort of more sort of working class support now for the not so much the Conservative Party. I think the Conservative Party actually did fairly well in terms of getting support among those who entered grammar schools. While with Reform UK, it's people like me who attended your sort of standard state education. So I think what you're seeing here, you're seeing a very different electoral marketplace now in the UK.
Reform, the party of bog standard comprehensive. Rakib Ehsan, thank you so much. That was Rakib Ehsan, the senior fellow at think tank Policy Exchange.